Hello, and welcome to the weekly reading. I am just shining in on a beautiful piece of fluorite, which is a great brain balancing crystal to use, and I would recommend it for this week as we are going towards the equinox this week, which is a balancing point of the year. Depending which hemisphere you're on, it's the balancing point that will take you into summer, as it is here in the southern hemisphere, or winter in the northern hemisphere. So it will have a very different flavor depending on which it is. But either way you look at it, it's one of the two equi points of the year: equal day, equal night, and it is like a pivot point, a swing point. I have brought in eucalyptus to work on how we are breathing, taking life in. It's an easily accessible oil to use. Obviously, I always recommend good quality oils, but eucalyptus is relatively cheap, relatively easy to find, and very good for the cardiovascular system, especially the lung side of that. And then a blend that I am very fond of with doTERRA, which is called Zengest. This is a obviously digestive kind of supportive blend, and I think there's, with Virgo season, there's still a lot of digestive stuff to do, and it seems to be, we've covered this in a lot of our weekly readings, that we keep coming up to these weeks that are a little bit more energetically quiet, like this one, that actually require for us to process what's been going on. So not just rest on our laurels and catch our breath, which it is kind of that opportunity, but if we use this constructively to digest and process and filter and release what we need to, it gives us a much better capacity for the next big wave, and also it helps us to move through things more quickly. So I've also just brought in some fire and some earth and some grounding energy in that. So pick a card between 1 and 4, and we'll jump into this week's reading, which I really want the focal point, I think, to be on the equinox. We'll also have a first quarter moon. But I think the equinox point later in the week is the main reveal. So pick a card between 1 and 4, and here we go. Okay, focus. There we go. Okay, and I mean, could I have drawn a better card? Well, I mean, I didn't. The universe popped it out for me. But could a better card have come out than Temperance for equinox point? Because that's exactly what Temperance is. It's all about balance. It's even in this, sorry, little shadow from my crystal there. It's even funny how the shadow was falling over the moon. And here you see the sun and the moon, and this kind of infinity symbol that this angel is almost playing between the two, the day, the night, the yin, the yang. And this is exactly what this card is about. It's about finding patience and rhythm and balance and recognizing cycles and seasons, that each thing has its place, and kind of keeping the balance of those great energies, and recognizing that as it is in the skies, as it is in the seasons, and of course this is a pivot point into a season. So for us here in the southern hemisphere, it's the spring equinox, so it is pivoting us into springtime, where in the north it'll pivot you into autumn. And again, of course, there's a different feeling when you're about to ascend to the light part of the year or descend into the dark part of the year. And of course, at different hemispheres, we will be doing that at different times. But nonetheless, it is that pivot into the soft season, not the depth of winter or the height of summer, the softer spring and autumn seasons. And yes, just really speaking into, if we see that in nature, how do we see that in ourselves? Because we are creatures that live on this planet, and all of the wild animals will react to preparing for the various seasons in a very natural, instinctual way. And if we tune back in, so can we. So I really feel like this first card this week is really setting the tone for reminding us to remember what it is to be a child of the earth and part of the rhythms and seasons and cycles. And when I say remember in that way, I want you to pull back, like bring those parts of yourself that are scattered and remember them onto your own body, into your own consciousness and heart.
And I love that this is followed by the Knight of Pens, because Pentacles is all about the earth, and it is all about creating that material life that we have, the foundations, the structures. What do we do to earn a living? What do we do as routines in our day to day to make sure that we have the meals cooked and the clothes washed and, the real practical nitty gritties of life? And the Knight, he is, especially in its upright form, he is a hard-working, steady, stable chap, He just gets done what needs doing, and he's slowly working towards one day becoming the King of Pentacles, who kind of surveys his kingdom. But at the night point, he is still kind of getting that together. He's still building towards, retirement or the pinnacle of his career, or whatever you want to call it. And this is a reminder, and I mean, really, that's just symbolic, because it doesn't matter what age and stage we're actually at in our own lives. There's always work to be done. There's always that plod forward and get it done, be practical. I mean, he's an earthy guy, so you might think of the earth signs of Virgo, which we're still in the season of Virgo at the moment and about to step into Libra. But so you think of the earth signs, Virgo, Taurus, Capricorn, and you ask yourself about people with those signs and how they have this sort of steady, stable grit, determination, stamina that kind of goes beyond what some of us can understand, how they just find that reserve within themselves. And part of that comes from drawing from the element of earth and drawing from following seasons and cycles, because there are times of the year and times of the month where we have more to give or where we need more rest. And if we honor that, we are actually much more productive. And I think that's also a key here, is to honor the cycles and rhythms. And as this is equinox time, it's an easy point for us to find balance in our life. So if there's spaces where you've been excessive, how do I pare that back? It will be much more easy to recognize and institute these things at a equal kind of time of year than, say, a solstice, where the swing is all the way to the north or all the way to the south in terms of sun or moon. So I really think, and also look how there's the angel of temperance is swirling that energy, and then he's sending it. You can see it sending it into this kind of ascending forward movement. He's not even leading his horses, just plodding behind him with a sense of trust in his master. And so he has a really peaceful, like, let's just keep going, and very relaxed, grounded, no shoes on his feet, connected to the earth. And then we come into another major arcana card, which is the Strength card, number 8, very indicative of that kind of Leo energy. And I do think this is a week, coming back to what I said earlier about consolidating, because this is a card that really says, go into yourself, find your own autonomy and agency and sovereignty, and say to yourself, okay, if I am the king or queen of my queendom, how do I consolidate what's going on? How do I digest? We've just really still in the shadow of the Venus retrograde in Leo, and we've been deeply reevaluating ourselves and what we want to take and bring to the world and take from the world and leave behind when we leave, and reassessing those values very much from the self standpoint. And here we have a quieter week where we're coming into this equinox balance, and it's time to go, what have I got in this last little while for myself? What did the last season bring me? That's another thing I like to do at all the equinox and solstice points, all of those 4 points, is what has the season, in my case, it would be, what has the winter shown me, and what can I take from that as I step into spring? Obviously, you would go, what has the summer brought me, and what do I want to step into as I move into the autumn or fall? So this is a really good week for us to find our strength. And sometimes that strength is vulnerability. Notice the lamb here, and the girl on one side is very young and fresh and vulnerable, sort of maiden energy. Again, we could see Virgo there. And on the other side is the strong lion. And lions, being a wild animal, are also very instinctual. So there's this conversation between the innocent, ideal part of ourselves and the vulnerable part of ourselves, and then the primal, instinctual wild part of ourselves that knows when to fight and when not to. So this strength card for me at this sort of gentler energy that we're experiencing this week really says this is a week to dig in a little deeper and figure it out inside of you, because there'll be another big wave. And that's also as we come to the King of Cups. So we've got 2 major arcana and 2 court cards, a knight and a king. So that's generally speaking a little bit more masculine energy as well. Of course, cups is water, which has a more feminine flow. So we're looking at, and you know what I'm just thinking of this here is we have Sun opposite Neptune during this week as well. Don't want to get too astrological in these card readings, but the strength card could represent Sun, Leo, and King of Cups could absolutely represent Neptune. So we can see that sort of dichotomy of finding our shine, our brightness, which we could look at as the sunshine time versus the balancing into the King of Cups, the more watery lunar energy. And because there is an upside downness about this king this week, we might find a bit of a resistance to actually go to the deep, vulnerable spaces. And that's exactly where we need to go. So if you drew this card in particular, then I want you to pay attention to that. Why am I afraid to look deeper? Why am I afraid to feel those intense feelings? What am I avoiding? What am I numbing? What am I running from, etc.? Because in his upright form, he has this sort of deep emotional intelligence and intuitive connection, and is very able to access his emotions, but not to really so much to overwhelm him. Whereas when it's upside down, we might be exceptionally overwhelmingly emotional on any front, whatever that's showing up as, moody, tantrumy. And I'm sure we can all relate to that time where you're feeling very emotional and vulnerable, and you can be so easily triggered. And you will oftentimes lash out at somebody who has nothing to do with it. Like you're annoyed with something at work and you lash out when you get home, or you're annoyed with something at home and you lash out to somebody else when you get to work. Those kinds of things might be showing up this week, especially if you drew the king. It's interesting, there's like just a shadow crossing over that as well. I'm just wondering, I think it might be coming from that oil. No, I don't know where that shadow is coming from, but there's like a shadow on the king, which seems really interesting to me, because earlier we had a shadow on the moon. So again, at equinox, for me, symbolism and things like that showing up are not by accident. I mean, of course, I can, to a degree, I can manage where the shadows fall and watch it, but I just feel like the fact that the shadow is landing over the king, like he's a little clouded, and it's like he's stuck in his unconscious and he cannot see. Just as it was over the moon in the Temperance card earlier. And it's like that point that we need to actually tap into this week that is hidden, a little in the unconscious realm for us. And how do we I mean, I moved the crystal and the moon is in shadow again. Yeah. How funny is that? Anyway, so you can see how we almost like have shadow at the 2 outer edges of this reading, which is also for me saying we need to go into the shadow to find the light this week. We need to go into the part that is out of balance to find the balance. So it's also a good week for any kind of sort of detox with that, well, especially at the equinox, maybe day before, day of, day after, if you like doing a fast or some kind of a cleanse. That's a really good time for that. Anyway, I hope you have enjoyed this weekly reading. Remember, I'm available for personal readings, and I hope you have great fun going into the shadow to find the light this week. Please remember to like, share, follow, subscribe, etc. if you are finding these valuable. Thanks so much for your time.